Thank you for joining us for the premiere of the Combat Anti-Semitism Movement author series. My name is Nelson France, and I serve as Director of Partnerships and Development for the Combat Anti-Semitism Movement, CAM. This program will focus on Before It's Too Late, a love letter to my daughters in America. It details European events since the 1980s, the rise of anti-Semitism, the Rozenberg family's history, and how all of this led them to decide to leave Belgium for the future of their girls. Our featured author is Eric Rozenberg, a Belgian-born American citizen, entrepreneur, author, speaker, and podcaster. From organizing projects for Fortune 500 companies in over 50 countries to volunteering to protect the Jewish community in Brussels, Eric has developed an ability to connect the dots, face reality, and take action in difficult situations. Fiercely independent and passionate about geopolitics, he's an avid reader and never shies away from expressing his opinion, even or especially if it is not politically correct. He happily lives in South Florida with his wife, Elsa, their 3 daughters, Naomi, Sherelle, and Tilia, and their dog, Simba. With that, thank you, Eric, for joining us. And why don't we begin with the first question, which is, why did you write this book?
Thank you, Nelson. Thank you for having me. Why did I read the book? I read the book, wrote the book. See, that's why it's I have to translate everything in English now. First and foremost, for my daughters. I wanted them to understand why my wife and I took them out of seeing their 4 grandparents every week, having a small Shabbat dinner with 20 people. Pesach was 45 people in our house. I had all the friends, the families, and why did we took them out of this life? What didn't understand, obviously, at the beginning. So I wanted them to understand that and have all the background and the decision that we took, and also the next generation in my family. And the more I spoke about the project, I realized that all the friends I have in America told me, I wish my ancestor would have written the book of why and how they came to America. So I thought, you know what, that's another motivation. And then I spoke with a lot of friends here, Jewish people. I realized that the Jewish people in South Florida in America don't necessarily understand what's happening in Europe and the dangers that we're facing here. And last but certainly not least, also Americans in general, Jews or non-Jews, that realized how great this country is, despite all the things that need to be fixed. And there's not one perfect country in the world. But how wonderful it is to live in America and all the opportunities we have. So all of this results in this book and a lot of work, a lot of references as well. I have about 175 endnotes. If people want to study further, well, check on the information I'm sharing. It's all there.
Excellent, thank you. And when did you know it was time to leave Belgium? Clearly, it came to a head as far as the anti-Semitism and knowing what was best for you, for your family, for your career, for your values. When did that light bulb go off? Yeah.
And it's not even for the career, it's really for the kids. And there was not one specific event. There's been a lot of events. The very first time I told my wife, it was in 2002. I came back from volunteering for the Jewish community, and during Yom Kippur, had spoken with different friends in law enforcement. And I came back and I told my wife, one day we'll have to leave this country. And she was devastated. Her family is a real tribe, wonderful people, and she would not even comprehend that could happen one day. And then it was a lot of series of events, like shooting in the Jewish school in Toulouse, like the killing of Ilan Halimi, Sarah Halimi, Mireille Knoll in France, all the events that happened throughout Europe. So it was really connecting the dots, but really the tipping point for my wife, I believe, was the 11th of January, 2009, when finally, for the first time, Israel decided to get into Gaza and stop all these missiles that they were getting on their head all the time. And in all the European capitals, you had thousands of people demonstrating. And in Brussels, there were 50,000 people mainly Muslim people, that were chanting Israel Nazi, dead to the Jews, which was obviously extremely worrying. And imagine my parents that were hidden children having to see that on TV. But watching those 50,000 people in the street of Brussels was something. The worst thing that my wife really started thinking was every single politician was in the first line. And of course, they say, oh, they didn't see what people were saying behind. Fair enough, even if you believe that, great. But the next day, when you saw the images on TV, in the newspaper, nobody said anything. And then she's starting, okay, if even the people that are supposed to lead us and defend us are not saying anything, that's really a major problem. That was, I think, really the tipping point. And then there's so many different events that I describe in the book. It's basically connecting the dots and finally thinking, okay, what's going to happen in 10 years? What's going to be the future for our daughters? What kind of opportunities, what kind of society are they going to live in? And as soon as my wife said, okay, I agree, we need to go, then we start putting the process in place.
Amazing, 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 amazing. So going off of that, clearly this was not an easy decision, not just to make the move, but again, to put this all on paper. I mean, this is your personal narrative. So what do you hope this work of yours, this now being your second book, first on this subject matter, what do you hope this book will achieve for your family, for American Jewry, for your friends and family back home in Belgium? What impact do you hope this work will create?
Mm-hmm. In terms of convincing people, I'm not trying to convince anyone. In terms of informing, I'm hoping to inform as many people as possible, and then they will make their own decision. Impact for my kids, obviously, is to understand, which I know they do now, but also thinking, I was imagining that in 100 years, the next generation in my family will be able to read and understand that. But the impact for my daughters is, okay, they have the background, they have the context, they understand what was going on and why we came here. For the Jews here in America, it's really to open their eyes, to remain open to anyone, but also realize who we are facing right now. When I'm speaking with a young Jewish boy who's in college, he's in the Jewish fraternity, and I'm asking him, is BDS on the campus? And he goes, BD what? I'm thinking, oh my goodness. So it's really informing. The first thing is to inform Jewish people which are all the different organizations that they have to face on campus and in general in society. And for all the friends here, it's really to have more background on why we did what we did, why we came here, so that they understand what's happening in Europe and some of the things that are happening here, thank God not everything, but that they are aware and open to speak up so that we're not reproducing all the same mistakes that were done in Europe. And that's really why I put the book there. I said, listen, this is my truth. It's not the universal truth, but this is the experience we had. And this is why we came here. So please be aware of what was going on and don't think that it cannot happen here. Democracy and freedom is an ongoing fight. Every generation has to do it. So just first thing, to be aware, to be educated. And to your point, no, it was not easy. Always this anecdote that I'm telling, when we first moved, people say, oh, you're very courageous to do this. And I kept saying, well, it's not like we're arriving at Ellis Island with the 3 kids and 2 suitcases, not knowing where we're going to sleep tomorrow, which is true. But at the end, my wife said, stop saying that. It's hard enough. And it's true. Every Friday, my kids, and they were crying because we were alone for Shabbat and they were not used to that. But not an easy process, but we never regret it. So that's why I put the book there, to have all this context, all this information, and then have a testimonial, personal testimonial of immigrants coming to the greatest country on earth.
Thank you for that. So, I see all the books behind you. It's really clear that not just this topic, but the idea of education, of sharing, not just your experiences, but what you've learned over that time with the world is important to you. It's important to your values. It's important to how you parent. It's important to how you work and your motivation and drive.
Absolutely.
But I want to get your perspective on this because you've experienced this in Belgium and now to a degree in the United States. How does anti-Semitism in the US compare to your experience in Brussels in particular?
Very good question. Well, Nelson, there's same things and there's different things. The same things, I would put them in four groups. The first one, you have, like we had in Europe, you have BDS, boycott, divestment, sanction. You have the Muslim Brotherhood with CARE, the Council of American Islamic Relations. You have the Student for Justice in Palestine. You have the Jewish Voice for Peace. There's so many organizations like that, and most of not all the pro-Palestinian organizations that are always speaking about peace, that are actually chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, and basically kicking all the Jews out of Israel. So that's the first group that I would say the same. The second group that is, to me, the same is, on one hand, is all the political aspect. On one hand, you have the neo-Nazi, the white supremacist, all the people from the Klan, all those idiots. But on the other hand, you also have the same as in Europe, an alliance between what I call the woke left with the Islamists, the Squad and people like that. The third group that it's really similar to me is the media, the Israel bashing, and they don't know what they're talking about. And I used to say, do you know the difference between an Israeli journalist and a Belgian journalist? The Israeli journalist is not obsessed by Belgium. And you had in the media in Belgium always Israel bashing. It was terrible. And the fourth group, to me, it's really, which is the same, is influencers that or are doing it on purpose, or what I call useful idiots. They just don't know what they're talking about, but they are spreading lies about Israel. Like, you know, the Hadid sisters, Bella Hadid, and everything she's posting. Roger Waters, some of the people that are supporting Louis Farrakhan and spreading those lies, up to people like John Oliver or Trevor Noah. And I don't know if they do it on purpose or because it's trendy, but those are the fourth group, if you want, for me, that is the same as in Europe. But what is very hopeful, and what I'm very optimistic here, and that's why people need to be informed and speak up, is that you also have the same four group, but different here. You do have organizations that are speaking up, that are fighting anti-Semitism. Obviously, Combat Antisemitism is one. You have Stand With Us, you have Stop Antisemitism, you have Canary Mission, you have Hillel, AIPAC, you have the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. You have all those many organizations that are pro-Israel on campuses and that are fighting those lies, that are educating and informing people. I think that that's extremely important. If you look at Israel Link with Stand With Us, or the Friend of the Simon Wiesenthal Center, all those events that are putting there to share information, and obviously what CAM is doing, is extremely important. The second group, to me, is the politicians that are here supporting Israel, supporting the truth, and basically understanding that Israel is probably the only country in the world with America that we share the same values with, that are ready to really fight for freedom and understand what that means. Then you have the media, and thank God there's a lot of media that are also spreading the right information, fighting, everything's going on. And then you have influencers. You know, if you're talking about Noah Tishby, what she's doing is amazing. Barry Wise, what she's doing is amazing. Eve Barlow, even, and I know it's very political, but somebody like Ben Shapiro, when he goes on the campus with his kippah and he's speaking pro-Israel, those are people that are speaking up. And I'm not talking about their politics. I'm talking about defending the truth about the Jews and about Israel. In Europe, there's very little. You have somebody like Hillel Neuer from the UN Watch organization, who's phenomenal. and another mensch, which is the Imam Hassan Chalgoumi, the president of the Conference of Imam in France, who's always speaking up for peace, who's always speaking up against the Islamists, and his life is 24/7 under protection. So what I see here, again, it's similarities, but also differences that makes me very hopeful that finally people are, Jews and non-Jews, realize what is going on, realize that Israel is fighting the fight for us like the first line of defense, and realize that, Jews are, my favorite question is to ask how many Jews you think there are in the world, and you say 15, 16 million, they goes, what? So that's why I see the difference between Europe and the United States, and between Belgium and the United States.
So going off of those differences, do you ever regret your decision to uproot your entire life and bring it to the US? I mean, clearly there are some distinct differences. You mentioned between influencers and the political space and media, and certainly the campus space, which we're all very much aware of. Do you ever think, oh, well, what if we'd stayed? What if we toughed it out? What would our life have been like? Do you ever regret that decision, or think about what life would have been like had you not left?
Never regretted 1 second. And when you know why you're doing something, that gives you the drive and the direction. We know why we came here. My wife and I thought it was much better for our kids here, and it is. And so we never regretted 1 second. I sometimes think, what would it be like? No, when I look at what's going on, it's like I know it's not kosher, but the lobster cooking, you put it in the cold pot, and lobster is very happy, no problem. And then you put 5 more degrees, very happy. 5 more degrees, very happy. And 5 degrees after 5 degrees after 5 degrees, finally the lobster is falling asleep, and you can cook it. And that's how I see what's going on in Europe. There is so many examples. That's why I put all those references in the book and try to explain that. There's so many examples that I gave you today. If 5 or 10 years ago, I would have told you, Nelson, in 10 years, this is what's going to happen there, you would have looked at me and said, have you been smoking lately? That's never going to happen. And it is happening. So no, we never regretted 1 second. Plus, I've always been personally an American at heart. So I'm also very happy professionally to be in the land of the free and the entrepreneurship. But for the kids and for my wife, who was an amazing lawyer and decided to be a realtor, and gosh, she's negotiating very well for everyone. We never regret 1 second. Now, it's not always easy. Again, I'm mentioning the friends and the family for sure. But no. And when we arrived here, last thing I want to share with you about that is that I told the kids, I don't want to hear it's better or it's worse. It is what it is. It's forward. You do have to understand the system and get into it, up to the point that we didn't know how the school system worked. So Naomi, our eldest one, had to explain that to us. And then you have the SAT, ECT, whatever T, that's all those things that we were not used to. Our kids are amazing, extremely resilient, and they help us understand our new country.
Thank you for that. As we get into the last questions here, if those of you in our audience want to submit questions, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. We'll have time for some questions from the audience here in just a moment. Where do you and the Jewish diaspora go from here? And I know that that's an incredibly lofty, and not that you have the responsibility of the entire Jewish people around the world, but what's next for you, for us, for the diaspora community in your eyes?
Where do we go? I don't know, with Elon Musk on Mars or something like that. Listen, I think that there is no 100% safe place for Jews in the world. Having said that, we obviously took the choice to come here in America, and this is our place. And we hope that for the first time in generation in our families, you will have at least 2 generations being born and dying in the same country, which has not been the case for decades now. For us, it's here for sure. And I think it's important as well to inform and then let people know, starting with the Jewish people. You're talking about the diaspora. I think that Israel needs the diaspora as well, but I'm sometimes extremely surprised when I see that some of the Jewish people don't understand the importance of Israel. It's the only Jewish state in the world. And, I sometimes hear people saying, Israel exists because of the Holocaust. This is absolutely not true. The rebirth of the state of Israel, it started 1897 with the first Zionist Congress in Basel with Theodor Herzl. And when I tell those people, I said, listen, Israel does not exist, or the rebirth of the state of Israel does not happen because of the Holocaust. But the Holocaust would have never happened if Israel was already in existence. And that, I think, is a major difference. So where do the Jews go? We are always very adaptable. And one thing is, for what I know of all the Jews in every country, we first are very grateful for the countries where we can live it and defending that country, like we did with Belgium, like we do now with America. And in the same time, understand where we stand and defending the state of Israel, which, is a little tiny thing that is a light in the world. I think that's where the Jews need to go. Need to go in their mind, understanding what's important. And again, for us, it's in America, but that's everybody make their choice. I don't think that is a future in Europe. I don't think that there is no future in Europe for Jews to live as a full citizen with full rights. I don't want to live like a dhimmi. And I certainly want to have my kids to have the same opportunities as anyone else.
So we have an excellent question from the audience here. If anti-Semitism ceased to exist, right? This is the world we all want to live in. Would you return to Belgium? Would you stay in the US? Would you consider moving to Israel, right? This future utopia where the world's oldest hatred no longer exists. What would you do?
Well, just the beginning of the question is antisemitism cease to exist? Yeah, it's a rhetorical question. I don't think that we are seeing the beginning of the end of anti-Semitism. I think on the contrary, it's morphing. And today, the new anti-Semitism for me is anti-Zionism. It was not okay to be anti-Semitic. Now you could say against Israel, and this to me is the same thing that is happening again in a different form. Will I go back to Belgium? It's not going to happen. We're here, we're American. I love it here. So no, I would never go. But the whole thing, if you think about it, that's a very interesting philosophical question. What would happen if anti-Semitism would not exist? Then maybe the Jews would also assimilate more. I don't know. I was raised in a very secular family, because after World War II, my grandfather, who jumped out of a train, which would have taken him to Auschwitz, and my other grandfather, who was in the armed partisan, they didn't want to hear anything about religion. They say, if God exists, how could he or she had let that happen? So I was raised in a very secular family, and the first time that I really became conscious of being a Jew is when I was insulted, when I was 12 years old. So, all those rhetorical questions are very nice. To me, at the end of the day, I'm happy to sit down with a good cigar and a good bourbon and have those conversations. But when the conversation is over, I want to face reality. And the reality is today, what is going on, why we need to be educated, and why we need to speak up.
You spoke before, and thank you for that, about assimilation and secular communities. So a question we have is for the average American Jew who's assimilated, what can they do to make a small difference, right? I think one thing that drives the combat anti-Semitism movement in a lot of our work is not just burying your heads in the sand and saying, there's nothing I can do, I'm powerless, but rather opportunities to take action. So how can people make a small difference in this fight?
I think the first thing is to know what's going on and to know who you're facing. So educate yourself, read, listen to, I mean, there's so much information available today. So just read about what's going on. The second thing for me is I make a big difference between assimilation and integration. I think that integrated means we are integrated in society and we have our own rituals. Comes now Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, but we integrated in society. Assimilated, then maybe you don't have those rituals anymore. And that I would miss because I love those tradition, and I think there's a lot of values that are great. But everybody can do something, and I think the first one, get educated. Second one, speak up. You know, I didn't thought at the beginning that I would publish the book, and then I thought, you know what, that might help some people. So let's do it. And again, that's not a career I want to have, but I just want to put it there. So everybody can do something, and little thing. And that's why I don't accept when you hear somebody who's being racist. Obviously, if somebody's being anti-Semite, but racist in general, because trust me, they will go against the Black, against the Asians, against all the different minorities, against LGBT, and then one day they'll go against the Jews. So speak up with that. That's the first thing that anybody can do, but it takes courage and also sometimes not very politically correct. If I was speaking with a friend, she is a trainer in DEI in the corporate world. And I asked her, why are Jews excluded from DEI? And she goes, what do you mean? I said, we represent like not 2% of the American population. We're not even considered a minority. Why are all those programs not including us? So by asking questions, by speaking up, you hope to make people change their mind and do something better in the future.
Thank you, Eric. From looking over the book, and I encourage all of those in the audience and those watching at home to check out Eric's new book. It's available wherever good books are sold. It just debuted yesterday. Is that right, Eric?
Yes, absolutely. It was published yesterday on Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
Excellent.
Sorry.
And in the book, and I know this is part of your narrative, back in May of 2014, I know this was a very difficult time for you. You'd already since moved to the States, but you were back in Belgium visiting, and you happened to be in the vicinity when a terrorist with Islamist motivations opened fire at the Jewish Museum of Belgium in Brussels, murdering 4 people. Mm-hmm. How did that event shape your worldview? I mean, at that point, you were American, you'd left Belgium, and yet in your home country, you had just been attacked. What was going through your mind, and how did that shape your view of geopolitics, if you will?
Yeah. Well, actually, we're not American yet. We're living in America. So we moved in July 2013. So I'm back in May 2014. I'm visiting with my in-laws. It's on a Saturday, the day before the election. We are at the Place du Sablon in Brussels. We are having lunch. And then we go out and start talking with my father-in-law, waiting for my mother-in-law was doing something inside. And suddenly all the traffic is blocked. And there's an ambulance coming. And blocked. So I run to Rue de la Régence, the main street, stop the traffic, let the ambulance go back. They thank me and come back. And my father-in-law said, well, you were quick. I said, yeah, because in that situation, everybody thinks that somebody else is going to do something and nobody does anything. And then there's a police car coming. And then my mother-in-law comes out and we start walking towards Rue des Minimes, the Jewish museum where we had parked the car. And then we hear another ambulance and another police car. And I say, well, there must be in a tent somewhere. I don't know. We're about to cross the street, and then we saw friends of my in-laws that said, there's been a shooting in the street there. I said, okay, I know exactly what it is. So I called friends that were volunteering for the Jewish community, for the security, and I said, I'm in Brussels. They go, what? And they asked me, can you come and help us? I said, yeah, of course. So we helped secure 180 kids from Shomer HaTzair, a Jewish movement. They were playing not far from there, like 5 minutes by car, with a guy on the run with a Kalashnikov, not knowing what was going on. Everything was on lockdown. The parents couldn't come and take their kids for hours. And when they came, one by one, they said, what are you doing here? I said, well, I was just visiting and say, oh, you were so right to leave, blah, 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 blah. Most of them look at me and said, very complimentary of what we decided, but some left, some went to Israel, some went other countries, some stayed. And actually, I realized that some of the people that were telling me they were so right are still here today. And I spoke with a friend in Belgium, and he said, you know what? People will take misery over uncertainty. And that's unfortunately what is many times the case. Uncertainty is hard. People don't know what's going to happen. They're afraid of change. So that's, if you want, that didn't change my mind about change and uncertainty and taking action. But I just realized that at that moment, you always have to make your own choice for your own family, and everybody else will make their own choice, very respectable. It didn't shape my worldview in a different way, if you want. It was just another example of what was going on, another event that was targeting Jews because they were Jews. And then I saw the politicians. I won't name one, but he was there, was one of the first one to make the call to the police. And 3 weeks after, he was speaking against Israel, and again, was sending money to the Palestinian Authority, who was, as we all know, becoming billionaires at the expenses of their own people. And nothing changed with that, which is another conversation, I guess, for another time. But this is why I didn't change my mind in terms of European leaders and their appeasement policy all the time. So that was an event that obviously it was very close. I was very close to. They were just confirming the decision we took.
And then let me go to a question from the audience, actually. What can be done on college campuses? You referenced it earlier. You referenced the importance of education. We all know that the campus space is riddled with anti-Semitism from all different motivations.
Yep.
So what, if anything, can be done, especially for college campuses in the United States? And maybe even you could talk about your take on college campuses in Europe, particularly in Belgium, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with that. Why are those organizations that are anti-Semitic, that are anti-Zionist, targeting the college campuses? And I've seen it in Belgium. And I've seen it when I was at the university, and slowly but surely, all spreading the lies. Why do they focus on the campuses? Because 20 years later, those students are the head of the political party, the head of the companies, the head of the media, the head of society. So they are playing the long game. So what we should be doing is, first of all, Jewish people need to be educated, need to know what are those organizations and what they're doing. Second, they need to have the information to share the reality, and they need to speak up all the time. And I was mentioning all the different organizations, Jewish organization and pro-Israel organizations, which is great. Sometimes I wish there'd be a little bit more coordination, but it's better than nothing, for sure. It's making sure that not only the Jewish people, but everyone, the future leaders of society, know the facts and don't believe the lies, because that's the only information they have. So it's extremely important to pass the information, to educate people, and to make sure that they understand what is really going on, so that they can speak up and they say, no, that's totally not true. This is a lie. If you really want to speak about peace, then sit down and let's discuss that. But college campuses, for me, it's the most important place where we should be active in terms of informing and educating people.
How is the transition from living in Belgium to living in the United States? I have to know. I've only lived in the United States my whole life, but I have to imagine there were some things that had a little bit of a learning curve, or took a little bit of time getting used to. Can you share that with us?
Oh yeah, those are some of the stories I mentioned in the book. And there is no credit score in Belgium to start with. And so people don't, you don't work with credit score. Then buying a mattress. I wanted to go and buy a mattress because my family was going to arrive in a few days. I have the first check from the bank, where check in Belgium, never used check in my life. In Belgium, doesn't exist anymore. But so I wanted to pay, and but the check was not with my name, and I didn't have the credit score. So the lady in the store called, and she couldn't sell me the mattress, so I have to pay cash. Then I see an ad for a car, so I went to the dealership, and I said, I've seen this ad. I said, yes, that's correct. Well, it's cheaper than Belgium. I'll take two. Say, great. Can I have your driving license? Say, sure. I give my driving license. And no, I need a US driving license. I say, well, we just arrived last week. Okay. Can you give me then your social security number? Well, we just arrived last week. Couldn't lease the car, and so on and so forth. The last example I can share with you today, for somebody who's worked in 50 countries still didn't understand. We wanted to rent a condo when we moved here. And so I was speaking with the lady who's managing the building, and she said, oh, I was told that you want the first floor. I said, no, I have a little one, 3 years old. So I don't want the first floor. I don't want her to fall in the stairs. There was a blank on the phone, said, but I was told you want the first floor, but then you were told the wrong information. I want the ground floor. And then there's another blank. And then I realized that, hold on, what do you call the first floor? Is that the ground floor? And she said, yes, sir. I said, okay, because in Belgium, the first floor is actually the second floor here. I mean,
right, as it is in Latin America and in much of the world.
There's so many different little things that you don't think about, so that you have to learn for all those little things that are obvious for people, whatever country you go. But then again, I think if you have the right mindset, the right mentality to learn and knowledge, that works well. I can tell you with my accent, sometimes I say word. I spoke one day in the board, and I was speaking about the household, but I was not pronouncing it very well. So it came out as another word, and people were just like, what? So those little things that you need to be aware of. And at the end of the day, it's great because it's new, and you learn something different, and you enrich with different cultures.
Got time for one last question here. What do you miss most about Belgium? Is it, I don't want to project here, but if you could have something from Belgium in the US that you don't have, or if there's something in particular that just makes you think of home that you miss, what about Belgium encapsulates that?
Well, home is here, that's for sure. But I don't know, maybe sometimes the Belgian soccer team or the food, but it's really the friends and family that we would miss the most. I love as well the under-assuming of Belgium. Belgian people in general are very friendly people, are under-assuming and not pretentious. Sometimes I wish they would speak up a little bit more and be more active on certain topic. But no, I don't really miss, besides the family and the friends. I love it here. We love it here. This is our country. This is America. So that's all I can tell you.
Well, thank you, Eric, for this fascinating conversation. Before we conclude today's program, again, not just thank you to Eric, but I encourage all of our viewers to find Eric's book, Before It's Too Late, A Love Letter to My Daughters in America, available where all good books are sold, including Amazon. This now concludes today's CAM Author Series program. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you for having me.